Namaste, Mother Nuggets! Hello, today we're going to talk about the Loner books. This is just like a little review. A bit later on I'm going to actually have a crack at playing this. Even further later on, I would like to use this to do like a Battletech thing. We'll talk about that in a second. This is just amazing if you're a weeb. I'm sure you're going to love it. Before we get started, Loner has a bit of contention in solo RPG community because of the way it uses AI art. I think it's important to have that conversation, but I think that conversation is not going to happen in this video. It's important to have it somewhere else. Go somewhere else with that conversation. I think there's a lot of great points to be made regarding that. I think, when you consider that Wizards of the Coast is using AI art, I think it's something that, we're not going to escape in our hobby fandom community. So whilst I appreciate that's a valid conversation, that's not what we're going to talk about when we're talking about Loner here today. Today we're going to talk about the system, the game mechanics of the system. We're not going to get into the hot topic. If you want to do that in the comments, by all means, that'll increase my engagement with this video and I would love to hear what you have to say. But I don't want it to turn into a toxic waste pit. A book I once read called Game Master's Guide to, The Money Master's Guide, Game Mastering for Fun and Profit said, it's better to raise a non-toxic community, and that's what I would like to aim to do, right? Shout out to my book if you haven't read it yet. So, let's have a chat about Loner, the system, not the books and the art. Loner you can get for pay what you want. The PDF is pay what you want on DriveThruRPG. I bought these through Amazon. If you buy these two, you can email the guy. He's really nice. He's like, hey, yeah, sure, here's the PDF of the PDF, the digital copy. ZodiQuest Games. It's got some Creative Commons going in it. Let's sum up Loner in the easiest way possible. Let's say you're new to solo role playing like me, or maybe you're not new at all. Maybe you're you're an old hat, and you were like, hey, I'm gonna get Mythic GME because that's what everyone uses. And then you looked at Mythic GME and you're like, ugh, what is this intensely complicated system that it moves up and down? It's way too crunchy for my brain, which there's a small percentage of people. Most people can handle Mythic GMA, I think, especially if you get the newer version, which has more flowcharts and whatnot. I went hard ass. I bought the old version and I got very confused. Loner is for you if you're that person. If you're me, if you're like, no, that's too much. You know what I mean? It is a very minimalist system. It is very straightforward. In a very simple summary, you've got a yes dice and a no dice, right? A good dice and a bad dice. I think they're called chance and risk. You roll them and then you compare these to a table that's in the book. And then depending upon what you get, it's either like yes, yes and, yes but, no, no and, no but, right? What I would say though is if let's say you're a fighter and you're good at fighting stuff and you're going into a fight, you get advantage, right? You roll them, then the highest dice you keep, the lowest dice you lose. Let's say you're a fighter and you're going into like a political intrigue type deal. And so you're going to have disadvantage to that. So you roll and you lose the whatever, or lowest dice. I can't remember which one it is. It's one of the two. You get advantage and disadvantage. If you play 5th Ed, you're familiar with that system. There you go. That's Loner in a nutshell. It has all the kinds of tables that you need. Oh, there you go. Look, there's the table for the yes, yes, and no but. Perfect. It has all the kind of tables that you need for, similar to Mythic GME, where you've got, your random sort of determining of different things. And then that's basically the system, right? That's basically the book. It's super simple, really designed for minimalist, jump into it, rules light sort of gameplay. The thing I like about it is super open-ended. And what it does is it gives you, it gives you the story. I think what a lot of people are looking for in this is being able to establish a story and guide them with where they want to go, and then the actual systems that they want to play lend themselves to doing the crunchy mathematical part of it, right? The way it works is it treats everything sort of like this character, whether it's your actual character, whether it's like an NPC, whether it's an organization, whether it's a mech or a ship or whatever, right? And it kind of guides you through how to do stuff, what to do, how to build your world if you want to do that. But also, conversely, if you already have an idea, right? Like for instance, I would like to play Mech Requiem with BattleTech. So if you don't need that world building, if you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start as like a Marek noble, and I'm gonna pilot a mech and blah blah blah. We're gonna be fighting the Steiners, right? Like, you can add all that in. You don't really need, you can add the stuff from the system that you're using in. But if you have nothing, then it will give you absolutely everything you need, including like setting stuff as well. So like science fiction or fantasy or whatever it is that you want to do, and it kind of has these different sort of sets of tables depending upon the different kind of worlds that you want. So gives you that structure that you kind of need. So it can be played cooperatively, though it is designed for solo. More importantly, it is geared for that, but you could definitely use it solo very easy. It also helps you kind of move from scene to scene. I don't know where that is in here, but it kind of walks you through that. Great news, it's got flow charts. Everyone loves a flow chart, and these look a lot more complicated than they actually are. So basically, if you remember what I was saying, it's like, do you need to roll, yes or no? Based off that, ask them a specific question, consider the tags that you have. If you have lots of positives, you do advantage. If you have, lots of negatives, you do negative. That's all that flowchart's saying, right? Like, it looks more complicated than it needs. Consider the context, look at what you roll. Is that what you want? If it's not what you want, then change what you're thinking, right? Pretty straightforward. Great system, super easy. The writing of this looks a lot more complicated than it actually is. Like especially this one here, the flowchart looks more complicated, but when you actually do it, when you work through it, it works great. Okay. They also have these little example boxes, which I think is really much better. It kind of helps you see a practical, real-world example of it being done. So that's Loner by itself. Great book, free PDF, or not free. It's pay what you want. It's worth the money. It's worth paying something. But if you buy the real book, yeah, like you email the guy. When I bought them on Amazon, it says in like the purchasing, email them for the PDF, and they give you the PDF of what you've got, right? So that's Loner. Now we've got these two here. Mech Requiem, geared towards Loner. We'll have a look at that in a second. Kwaidan. It is, this one's like Japanese sort of monster hunting spirit quest. Sort of, it gives me Samurai Jack vibes. You're kind of like trying to explore this, feudal Japanese culture. And coming across demons and spirits and monsters and things on the way. It is very inspired by those old samurai movies from back in the day, where you've got your lone hero, kind of like Wolf and Cub type deal. It also takes a lot of inspiration from some more modern games, like Ghosts of Tsushima, is it? I can never remember what it's called, but I've played the game. We have it here on the PlayStation, right? And it kind of gives you similar tables to what's in the main book, but they're a bit more geared towards these, this Japanese concept. And I guess that's what these books are for, these setting books, to give you sort of more specific ideas, and they're in line better with the system, that it's kind of better with the genre is the word I'm looking for, right? And so you've got more detailed mystical locations, haunted artifacts. My security officer's trying to check out our library at the minute. You might hear some rustling around over there. Gives you some factions that you might want to deal with, and so obviously this is kind of like a setting book. So if you can think of like, this is like, your D&D core rules. This is like the Faerun Guide or whatever. This would be the Oriental Adventures, I guess. It'd be the equivalent, right? So you've got that. Mech Requiem. Obviously, mech games are a bit more... you can see this one's considerably thicker than this one, right? The Mech Requiem is based on Loner, but in addition to Loner, obviously you need a mech if you're going to do mech games, right? And it is, again, very open. So you could be talking like Gundam style. You could be talking like, Battletech, whatever. Now, if you want to play in their setting, they've got some, fluff for that. But you could very easily, articulate this to whatever system you want. Again, everything's a character, so they're like, you know, taking these concepts, putting them in a mech-based kind of environment. So you're not getting like, you know, magic. You know, these two books are kind of like the opposite, right? You've got your magic and your spirits, but no tech. This one's got all the tech, no magic and spirits. And then Loner obviously, Loner obviously has like both, right? Pretty straightforward. Lots of fun stuff. You got some names, some nicknames, but more importantly, and this is why the mech one's a bit thicker, is you have to make your mech. And similar to mechs, you know, similar to the characters, the mechs need to have kind of their concept and what they're kind of built and designed around. But also they need systems and vulnerabilities, right? Just like strengths and weaknesses. This whole system's built on this concept of strengths and weaknesses because that's how you get your advantage and disadvantage for doing that sort of stuff. They've also provided you with like actual pre-made stuff. So if you just want to roll like a 6d6 table and get yourself, you know, a random mech design, and that way you can just jump straight into it. You don't have to really build the character as much as you know, whatever. And then likewise, you know, you do have these other systems that sort of do walk you through it. Now, whilst in theory you can play these books, the adventure books, sort of like alone and self-contained, I feel personally when I was trying to do that, it was missing a little bit that is needed from this. Like I said though, the PDF for this is pay what you want, so you know, you can get it very cheap. If you're a real miser and a horrible human being, you'd get it for free, but you could definitely, you know, pay $2 or what have you and have this as a PDF. And just to kind of walk you through the process, not that I think you'd need it, especially if you're experienced with something like Mythic, but that is, I felt that was a necessary component to these. Not that that's just because I'm new to it, right? Like I think if you were more experienced, you wouldn't need that. And otherwise, great system. I'm really looking forward to doing this. And like I said, I am keen to use this mech book with Battletech. So where I think this system shines, like I was saying before, is you pick your system that you're going to use, and then you use this to generate the story. And then if you want a more crunchy system, you know, you're gonna get the actual system that you want. So for instance, how I plan to use this with Mech Requiem is I would generate the plot and the ideas and the factions and the NPCs, sort of, you know, like what their motivations are through this book, but then I would fight the actual battles using Battletech, classic Battletech role-playing game. And I think that's my plan for doing that. I do want to do just a generic loner fantasy whatever one, just to kind of test out the system raw and see how that is. But another way that I think I'm going to use this is I've started trying to do Warhammer Fantasy roleplay with, like, I've got a little character set up. He's like a rat catcher, but the problem that I'm having is moving that story along, right? Like I've got my character, I've got my idea, I've got the system, but generating that story, like where am I going, why am I going, what factions are involved, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where this sort of system comes in handy, to then apply that to the rest of the game. Not that you need that, but that's how I'm planning on using it. Hopefully that's a useful little summary, and in the not too distant future we'll give Loner a crack. Sound good? Sounds great to me. Enjoy!